Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are checking out another brand new Jurassic World figure, this time another Takara Tomy release, as this is the Ceratosaurus. So we've got a nice Jurassic Park 3 Ceratosaurus now finally entering the Takara Tomy line. I personally am very excited about this because I think Ceratosaurus is probably one of the coolest dinosaurs ever and definitely one of my favorites from the Jurassic franchise overall. Even though he's only had a tiny little itty bitty bit of screen time, I absolutely love this dinosaur, and I specifically love the Jurassic Park 3 design. Just something about it, I don't know, I've always loved it ever since I was young. But you can see the box art looks pretty nice. You've got a nice shot of the figure and everything here on the front. I think this figure definitely looks better than the Scorpius Rex did that we had just recently reviewed. I feel like the Scorpius looked kind of awkward, and although I think maybe this one is sculpted by the same person because it still has that same sort of kind of awkwardness to the skin texture, it still looks a lot nicer, at least as far as what I could see here on the box, compared to the Scorpius. And you can see another shot up here on the top of the box. Again, another shot over here on the side, kind of showing off some of the articulation. And then here on the back, you have almost the same thing going on as far as what we had with the Scorpius. Again, we've got the Atrociraptor in blue here, but we now have, instead of the Scorpius, of course, we have the Ceratosaurus. And then over here on the side, pretty much the same thing again with just some random stuff from Jurassic World Dominion specifically, and then again the Ceratosaurus up here. So let's go ahead, pop the box open, and check it out. So here is our Ceratosaurus, and honestly, it is actually a lot nicer than I was expecting, and definitely way nicer than the Scorpius Rex was recently. Specifically, one thing I'll say right out of the gate is I kind of misjudged this one when it comes to the appearance on the box and the way the skin texture looks. I think it looks a lot nicer on the actual figure, more so than what we had seen on the box. Still is a little bit of an awkward look, specifically like in the thigh. I think it looks kind of strange, but it still looks a lot better than it did on the box. It also is a good bit larger for some reason than I was expecting it to be. I don't know if it's because the Scorpius was a little bit smaller than I'm used to, but this one definitely seems, again, a bit bigger than what I'm used to when it comes to Takara Tomy. Not really, I guess, all that much bigger. Just, I don't know, maybe a little chunkier is what is kind of getting me a little bit confused, but it still looks really cool. So let's jump to a closer look and we'll check it out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Ceratosaurus, you can see it looks pretty good, and one thing that is definitely improved on this one over the Scorpius we had just recently taken a look at would be the teeth. The teeth look a lot nicer on this figure. Obviously, they don't look great in the overall grand scheme of things. You know, they don't have a sharp look. They are all sculpted together. They definitely could look better. You know, the figure is pretty small, though. You can see it within my fingertip. But again, the teeth compared to the kind of blob that we saw on the Scorpius definitely look a lot nicer on the Ceratosaurus. Same deal for the very small teeth of the lower jaw. We can see the tongue sculpted out in there, painted with a nice pinkish tone, and the detail on the inside of the mouth looks okay. We've got that pink everywhere. The paintwork of the teeth as well looks a lot nicer and a lot more precise on the Ceratosaurus over the Scorpius. Obviously, we can see we have an articulated jaw, which seems to work pretty nice. It can go open pretty wide and also close very nicely. We've got the horn up here on the snout of our Ceratosaurus, painted with a nice light tone. Looks really good. We've got the reds here in the face, and then you've got a yellow eye with a black pupil, also nicely painted. So in general, the paintwork of this one, I think, is a lot nicer than what we had on the Scorpius as well. So this one overall, you know, I kind of was like put off by the Scorpius release, and this one's just kind of pulling me right back in when it comes to these Takara Tomy figures. But you can see we've got the osteoderms kind of moving along the spinal column, as well as kind of like, you know, down along the side of the dinosaur, kind of following along the spinal column, but off to the side. We have that reddish coloration leading down through the course of the body. You have a black that kind of stripes down, actually more like a dark gray that stripes down along the back of the dinosaur. Not really exactly the type of patterning you would see on a Jurassic Park 3 style Ceratosaurus. There's just usually more to it rather than just a striping. There's a good bit more as far as the way that the patterning works. But when it comes to your most generic version of a JP3 Ceratosaurus, you know, it's pretty much the way it works. And at least they did capture that darker tone, and you do see a little bit more of that in the thigh, which does look a little bit better, but still really quite generic. But as you move down, the skin detail, honestly, again, looks a lot nicer on this compared to the way it looked on the box, and it looks a lot more impressive when it comes to the fine detail, and also just generally the amount of kind of like movement and stuff you can see on the skin of the dinosaur. As you lead down, you can see the arms are sculpted pretty decently. We do have seams there where the arms are connected. Yet again, I feel like they should have articulated them, but they in fact do not articulate, sadly. We can see the fingers look okay. The nails are kind of lackluster. They're very small and of course rounded, so they don't look very good, but they are at least painted with a dark tone. As we move back, actually if we pull the legs back, you can get a better look at the skin detail and everything here in the stomach region. We do have a light brownish tone for the lower body of the dinosaur. Obviously you can see the legs articulate forward and back. That's about as far forward as this one goes, but it can go back actually all the way back around, so you can get some pretty decent range of movement. Same thing for the opposing side when it comes to the legs. As you move down into the thigh, again, I think the thigh looks a little awkward. In general, I think the skin almost looks like it's melting on the leg of the Ceratosaurus. It looks better on the body, but awkward on the leg. I don't know why. You can see the knee right there in the front of the leg, though. Kind of a calf muscle, but it also looks like it melted a little bit. As you lead down into the foot sculpt, you can see some scoots moving down the toes. The nails look pretty decent on this one, and they are also painted nicely with a dark brown tone. And we do have dew claws, and they are painted. How about that? You don't see that every day. But definitely decent as far as the sculpting goes. There's also kind of a weird crouching position for this one. I don't know why, but there's just like a severe crouch to the leg, which is a little weird. I feel like it would have looked nicer if the legs were outstretched a little bit more, but it's not the end of the world. As we lead out into the tail, though, you continue to see, again, pretty much the same type of skin texture. You see those osteoderms following along the top of the tail, and no other coloration outside of the brownish tone, though. You can see the red wears off as you lead down past the hip region. You can also see those dark stripes end before we lead out into the tail. But it looks okay as far as the overall, skin texture and stuff out here in the body. Definitely better than the thigh. And then you, of course, do have the articulation here with those ball joints in the tail. And as usual, you can go up and down. And if you twist the ball joint, you can then kind of go left and right, but it looks a little awkward when you do it. But overall, again, the Ceratosaurus, in my opinion, is definitely a lot nicer than our recent Scorpius Rex figure from Takara Tomy, and is probably one of my favorites to come from Takara Tomy in quite a little while. As far as a size goes, for a length, you are looking at about 6¼ inches, or around 16 centimeters. And for a height, in the position it's standing right now, just shy of, I would say, just shy of 3 inches, a little over 2 3/4, or around 7½ centimeters. But you could, of course, alter the positioning. You could move the dinosaur down much lower or much higher. It's really up to you. Of course, that's the advantage of articulation in the legs. But for a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A human being next to our Ceratosaurus from Takara Tomy. And you can see pretty darn small like usual. Definitely in the standard size range from Takara Tomy. And to show you that, we've got the Allosaurus here next to the Ceratosaurus, and you can see these two are pretty much the same size. Obviously, you can see that difference, though, I was speaking of in the legs, where the legs of the Allosaurus are outstretched a lot more, as opposed to the kind of crouching look we have for the Ceratosaurus. Almost looks like it's trying to go to the bathroom in the position it's in, but very, very similar in size between these two, which again shows you that if you are familiar with the Takara Tomy figures, you're going to have a pretty good idea of the size of this Ceratosaurus. And then for one final comparison, we also have the Scorpius Rex I had just reviewed from Takara Tomy as well, again showing you that these two are kind of similar in size, with the Ceratosaurus being only just a hair larger. So this brand new Takara Tomy Jurassic World, I guess it's advertised on the box, but I would say Jurassic Park 3 Ceratosaurus is definitely a very fun figure. Overall, when it comes to Takara Tomy, I feel like it's probably one of the nicest they've had in quite some time. Of course, I wish it would have more when it comes to the detailing of the paint. Like, the patterning is as generic as it gets, and I would have really liked to have seen more of that actual kind of traditional Jurassic Park 3 Ceratosaurus patterning through the body. But maybe that's something I'll do at some point if I get another one. Maybe I'll repaint it to make it look more actually like, more screen accurate, because the paintwork of this one is pretty generic, and that's kind of what I expect from Takara Tomy. They don't usually go all in when it comes to their paint jobs, so when it comes to the paint apps of a JP3 Ceratosaurus, I feel like that's pretty much as good as I was expecting it to be for a Takara Tomy release. Sculpt-wise, though, the figure's really nice. Overall, I think it fairly decently resembles a JP3 Ceratosaurus, and of course we also have some nice looking skin texture, really quite impressive in some areas until you reach the legs where it looks like the dinosaur's melting, but overall the skin texture looks half decent as a whole, and the likeness is definitely there. It's obviously not perfect, but pretty close. The teeth are also a lot nicer on this, and you have articulation, which is fun. Definitely a great addition to any figure, in my opinion, would be articulation, so it's always nice to have that in these Takara Tomy figures. So overall, a much bigger recommendation than the Scorpius. The Scorpius is okay, don't get me wrong, but this Ceratosaurus is definitely a little bit nicer. So if you are interested, just like with the Scorpius, I will try to find a link to include in the description, but I don't know exactly what the price point will be because a lot of these newer Takara Tomy figures, like the prices are really high right now. They'll probably come down over time, but I'll try to find the cheapest option for you. Otherwise, just keep an eye out for it, pick it up when you can find it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.